Good evening. Just my mere presence near the microphone seemed to get everyone's attention. My name's Adam Chapdelaine. I'm the town manager here in Arlington. Welcome. Thank you for coming. We're here tonight. I'm assuming you're all here to talk about the Lake Street Bikeway intersection and the proposed signalization that we're working on. And we are here tonight to present to you initial design concepts and to receive your feedback on that. So I want to do a few things in introduction. I want to talk a little bit about the background about this project. I want to introduce the design review committee that's been working on the project and make a few other just small additional comments. So to start, I'm assuming everyone here is familiar with the intersection. It's been an intersection of concern that we at the town, as town officials, hear a lot of concern about from residents, from all modes, from drivers, walkers, cyclists, really everybody. And over time, a lot of that concern reached the ears of the Board of Selectmen, and that prompted the Board of Selectmen back in 2014 to ask the Transportation Advisory Committee, or TAC, to do an analysis of the intersection and see if there was any improvements or changes that could be made to address some of the concerns that were being raised. So TAC performed that study and that analysis, delivered a report or completed a report in December of 2014 regarding the intersection of Lake Street and the Bikeway. They then presented that report to the Board of Selectmen in February of 2015. And as part of that report, recommended that a signal be installed that would be synchronized with the signal at Brooks Avenue, and that we would recommended that we form a design review committee to oversee the design and implementation of that signal. At that same meeting that TAC presented to the Board of Selectmen, a number of members of the community were there to express concerns about what some of the impacts of that signal might be, and those concerns being raised prompted the Board of Selectmen to ask TAC to do a little bit further study and to actually perform a simulation of what a signal might look like if synchronized with the signal at Brooks Ave, using patrol officers directing traffic timed with the Brooks Ave signal. So that simulation was performed in June of 2015. TAC collected both baseline data without the simulation and then data with the simulation, and formulated a further report to the Board of Selectmen that was then put before the board in February of 2016. At that meeting, the Board of Selectmen voted to move forward with planning a signal at the intersection of the Lake Street and the Bikeway and forming a design review committee. That design review committee was officially appointed in January of 2017 and started their work shortly thereafter, and their work has led to tonight. So with that, I'd like to introduce the members of the committee, who I think are all here. We have represented on the committee representing DPW, the town engineer, Wayne Chouinard. Wayne's in the back. We have Officer Corey Rateau representing the Arlington Police Department. Corey's also in the back. We have Nat Strasberg representing the Planning and Community Development Department in the back. We have Jeff Maxtudis from the Transportation Advisory Committee right here in the front. We have Elizabeth Shea from the Arlington Bicycle Advisory Committee. We have Rachel Stark representing Walking in Arlington. And we have Alex Bilski, who represents East Arlington Livable Streets. Thank you to the committee for all the work you've done to date. The only other thing I want to add at the advice of the committee is we clearly have also have new signalization in Arlington Center. We have the new signal pattern at the main intersection, and then we have the Hawk signal at Swan Place. Myself, Mike Rademacher, who's the DPW director, Wayne as town engineer, we've been receiving significant feedback about that new implementation. There's a number of things we're working on. We're working on the issue of the bike signal heading westbound on Mass Ave, confusing drivers thinking they have a right turn signal, and the conflict that has been occurring. So we're working on a solution to that with MassDOT. We've been hearing concern about the amount of time that bicyclists have to wait to go, I guess what would be southbound across Mass Ave towards the Unitarian Church, prompting them to then swim upstream on the opposite side. I think we've actually solved that, and we need to take a look on whether or not it's working. We've heard general concern about people not knowing how to navigate the intersection and use the green bike queuing box in the eastbound lanes. So that's something we're trying to figure out if there's a way to more clearly demonstrate to users of the path and the intersection how to do so. And then we've also heard a lot of concern about the hawk signal, confusion for drivers of what they're supposed to do on the solid red versus the blinking red, and then also frustration for pedestrians and bicyclists needing to wait longer than they might expect, prompting them to cross before they get the signal, which then further confuses drivers. So we're working on improved signage for the hawk signal, and I believe the town engineer was actually out on site today working with some members of the design team, trying to work on ways to improve some of that wait time confusion or frustration. So the point of me saying all that is tonight I'd like to avoid comments during the feedback session about the hawk signal in the center, but I'll be here after the meeting. Mike Rademacher will be here after the meeting, as Wayne will. And if you do have questions, concerns, or comments about the signalization in Arlington Center, we'd be happy to talk to you about that. Or you can email us and call us in our office at any time about that. So with that, I'd like to introduce the consultant engineer that we've hired to do the design, Jason Sobel, who's going to give a presentation about the design and then take your feedback and comments. And I also want to mention that, so tonight we're at a preliminary stage of design, and tonight's the best really time to get your feedback, get your comments, so that we have an opportunity to consider them and put them into the design. We'll do all that. The design team will go back to work. The design review committee will go back to work. And then we will call another public meeting in late September and come back at 75% design for further presentation and then for further comment. The longer we go in design, the harder it is to implement or insert comments into the design. So tonight's really critical to get good public feedback and then have an impact on the design. So with that, I'll turn it over to Jason Sobel.
Thanks, Adam. It's good to be here. My name is Jason Sobel. I'm with Green International. And before we get into the proposed concept, I'd like to just repeat a little bit about what Adam was saying regarding the public history and or the history of this project and some of the concerns that have been raised over the years, as well as the project goals. So the number one issue here at the Minuteman Bikeway crossing is a safety concern for really all users at the crossing, which includes pedestrians, bicyclists, as well as motor vehicles. And there's really a high volume of traffic and a high volume of pedestrians and bicycles. So this is a big, significant crossing along the Minuteman Bikeway. And I'll get into a little bit more detail on both of those a little bit farther down. So the overall goal is a safe, predictable, and efficient crossing for all users. The next couple slides, I guess I'll go through fairly quickly. This is a little bit of a repeat, but we've been through a lot on this project already in terms of analysis and evaluation. The TAC in the initial report submitted to the selectmen and the town in December of 2014, that evaluated several alternatives. I think there were 6 or 7 different alternatives, including signalization and unsignalized options. And ultimately, the outcome and the recommendation of that initial report was a traffic signal at the Lake Street crossing, coordinated with Brook Street, with that signal at Brook Street. As Adam stated, then the selectmen asked for further evaluation. There was police officer controlled, sort of as a trial run to see how it would all work before the town invested money in new infrastructure here. And ultimately, the findings of that trial run were fairly consistent with the model results and what was in the initial report. So after that second Board of Selectmen meeting, the Design Review Committee was formed, and that brings us forward to where we are right now. So I mentioned the high traffic volumes and high volumes on the Minuteman itself. These are the 2018 projections that were initially done as part of the 2014 evaluation. Basically, we have 1,300 to 1,400 vehicles on Lake Street during each peak hour in the morning and afternoon, and 250 to to 350 pedestrians and bicyclists crossing at Lake Street. So this is a very high concentration of lots of different types of users all in this one small area. And the safety and crash history, I mentioned that was the overarching goal of this project, is to improve the safety. The data that are presented here on this slide, there's two sets of data. The 2011 to 2014 data were presented in the initial report from the TAC, and then the 2014 to 15 data were presented along with the follow-up results of the trial run. The most recent data here, 14 crashes right at the crossing. The most prominent crash type was rear ends, and I think a lot of that is related to uncertainty of the crossing, in terms of one vehicle stopping for pedestrian or bicyclist and then another vehicle rear-ending that first. Certainly, any types of crashes are a concern, but particularly at a location with heavy pedestrian and bicycle usage, it is a particularly high concern. And that's reflected in the number of injury crashes as well. While this data ends in 2015, we are aware that crashes have continued here. There was another notable crash in December of last year, December 2016, where a bicyclist was struck by a car after not stopping at the Lake Street crossing. Excuse me. All right. So with that, I'd like to jump into the initial concept that we have. And I know this is zoomed out a little bit. I have a closer up slide that we'll get to in just a minute. But I wanted to give everyone an overall orientation of the project and what's included and what isn't included. So looking at this. Does this mic work too? Good. All right. So in this image, north is up. Mass Ave is off to the right side of the screen. Route 2 is off to the left. Alewife is to the southeast of this, and Town Center is up in this direction. So the project as it's proposed today includes an improved crossing at the Minuteman Bikeway crossing at Lake Street, along with a full traffic signal. This little symbol is just off to the side, so it's not blocking our graphics here, but a full signal here, along with all new traffic signal equipment at the Brooks Avenue intersection. And that's really important to ensure that the two signals operate as one system and are communicating with each other. I believe most of our discussion tonight is going to focus on the actual crossing, and I'll get to that in just a second. But I wanted to make sure everyone understood that the project also included the signal equipment over at Brooks, right near the Hardy Elementary School. So let's see, just to orient people here, because I've rotated everything 90 degrees, Mass Ave is up off to the top, and Route 2 is down in this direction. Alewife is to the right of the screen, and Town Center is over this way. Hardy School would be right off the image up there. So when I say improved crossing, what I'm really talking about is right now it's a 12-foot bike path with just a 12-foot crosswalk at the intersection, and it's almost today doesn't really operate like a full intersection, but rather a mid-block crossing. And if you're not familiar with the area, it's easy to miss. If you're not familiar with the bike path, the bike path is heavily wooded. The sight lines aren't great, and as you exit the bike path, it drops you right out into the street. There's not a big area there, or no real information or visual cues or nothing to tip you off that, hey, you're crossing a major street here. So the idea that have been discussed both in the initial reports that the TAC made, and those discussions have continued with the working group, is to separate the modes of travel and clearly define where people should be going, whether they're in a car, or bicyclists, or pedestrians. And that's important because everyone's going at different speeds. Even within the bicyclists, we've got very serious bikers who are traveling very fast along the path, and then the more casual bikers or children on bikes and things of that nature. So to describe what we're looking at here is the bike path going in this direction here. We would have an asphalt approach here with clear pavement markings and signage. The signage isn't shown on the graphics here for a bike lane, and then cement concrete sidewalks on either side. That's sort of consistent with how the bike path operates today along the entire stretch, as bikes tend to be towards the middle, pedestrians walking along the outside. And then we've added a little bit of, we think, some curvature here, and these center islands here, it might be flush, it might be brick, or some kind of landscape like that. It may be a raised island. As everyone is aware, this is a very early concept, and some of those details haven't been worked out, and that's some of the feedback that we'd love to hear from you. And then, in addition to the improved crossing and the area for pedestrians and bicyclists in the middle, everything would be fully under signal control. That's for vehicles, pedestrians, and bicyclists. Now, I think most people are familiar with what vehicular traffic signals look like, just red, yellow, green signal indications. We'd also have pedestrian signals. That's the little walking man and the hand with the countdown displays. For the bicycle signals, what we'd likely be proposing here is what's shown here. And really, that's a red, yellow, and green indication, but instead of a circular indication, it's actually a bicycle symbol. So those bike signals would be along the bike path parallel to those pedestrian signals. And well, it's somewhat new. It's not unprecedented. Other towns and cities in the area are using these already. Most notably, even along the Minuteman Bikeway in Lexington at the Bedford Street crossing, those bicycle signals are already in place. So those bicycle signals would be, if we install them here, would be consistent along the Minuteman Bikeway itself. So I think I've talked, so some other things that I'd like to mention that are part of this design as well, because it's important to understand that the work that the design committee and the design will be doing is not just putting up a signal at the existing crossing and calling it a day. We want to make sure that this is designed in such a way that it encourages the safest use of the new system, and making sure that everyone slows down and understands what the signals mean and who the signals are for. And so as part of that, we really want to change the feel of the approach. So in addition to separating out the users on the approaches, these approaches to the Lake Street, the bikeway approaches, would be significantly wider here. It's a 12-foot path today, and as this concept is drawn, at its widest point is about 25 feet, so about twice as wide. And really what that is 2 5-foot bike lanes, one direction bike lanes in each direction, 2 5-foot sidewalks for pedestrians, and then a 5-foot median in the middle. So we think that this is a pretty important component, so that as bicyclists, as pedestrians, as anyone who is approaching the Lake Street crossing, it will be immediately obvious that something is going on here. I'm coming to a crossing. It's a different area. It's not just more continuous bike path. This improved crossing will also make the crossing more visible to vehicles driving on Lake Street. As I said, today it's just a narrow crosswalk, 10 or 12 feet wide. A crosswalk like this is certainly much more visible. It's a much wider crossing and definitely more noticeable. Other components of the design will be some landscape architecture design, and whether that's, a lot of that design hasn't yet been done, and we'd love to hear from the public about what kind of landscaping there should be, as well as potentially some benches, pedestrian scale lighting. Certainly people use the Minuteman Bikeway year-round, and it does get dark in the winter and fall hours, so the lighting is also an important component to alert people that they're coming up to this crossing. I think the last thing I'll mention is, before I open it up to questions and comments, is that a lot of discussion has occurred both at the selectmen meetings as well as with the design committee already, in terms of making sure and doing our best so that there aren't any unintended consequences. An example of that might be that certainly safety is a critical issue here and the primary goal. And we're well aware that the Hardy Elementary School is very close by. And there's pedestrians, children, lots of people walking along Lake Street itself. And what we don't want is people walking along Lake Street and then a bicyclist coming down the path, seeing that they have a green light, not stopping, and then hitting a pedestrian. So these are some things that we've already been talking about, and we have some ideas for that one in particular. The much wider crossing, we'll be treating this more like an intersection rather than a mid-block crossing, and I think we'll need to be controlling pedestrians walking along Lake Street somehow as well, with perhaps pedestrian signals for crossing the bikeway, as if it were a side street intersection. So that's an important component. And in terms of, I'm not going to get into the nitty-gritty details of the traffic signal design, but one thing that has been discussed both at the selectmen meetings with the TAC and with the design committee is that we want to ensure that these signals operate as efficiently as possible. We fully understand that no one on the bike path wants to wait 45 seconds, a minute, or longer. And at that point, pedestrians probably aren't going to wait, and they're just going to ignore the signals and cross. So in our in the TAC's initial analysis and in the trial runs with the police control, a lot of different things were measured, including traffic counts and travel times between Route 2 and Mass Ave, but also pedestrian and bicycle delay for users of the bike path. And both the initial analysis results as well as the trial run indicated that on average the pedestrian delay would be about 15 to 20 seconds. And the TAC and the design committee feels that is a fairly reasonable and fairly short pedestrian delay, and therefore we're optimistic that people will do what they should be doing and following the lights once they're installed. So with that, I guess I'll just reiterate that we're still at a very early stage here. These are early concepts that we've put on top of aerial photos. We're in the middle of doing the existing conditions surveys that will facilitate our actual design plans. So now tonight is really the best opportunity to hear your comments and questions and feedback. We will be doing another public hearing again. But at that point, the design will be farther along, and certainly while the design could still be refined at that point, it'll be harder to make bigger changes at that stage. So with that, I think I'd like to open it up. I think Nat will be facilitating any public comments and feedback. So if you do have comments and feedback, please come on over here so everyone can hear you in the microphone.
Jason, thank you so much. And I just want to emphasize that for those who are interested in comments and questions, if we could just form a line on this side, please. And I would kindly ask you to state your name before you do speak. Thank you so much.
How you doing? My name's Gene O'Neill. I live on Spy Pond Parkway. The problem stems from the choke point. The reason being every motorist stops in anticipation of the bicyclists who do not stop for the stop sign. Some of them do. Are the bicyclists here tonight? How many of you stop for the stop sign? How many don't? Okay, great. So this won't affect you. Instead of spending all this money here, I don't know what they call them. You've got that sign right in the middle of the crosswalk out there. It says stop for the pedestrians. Okay, if you put 6 of those or 8 of those on each side of that bike path and staggered them, so you have 3 or 4 here, 2-3 feet back here, it causes the bicyclists to maneuver that almost to a stop. The emergency vehicles could drive right over them. It doesn't impede them at all. You don't have to spend a lot of money on this stuff, and it prevents the bicyclists from darting out. I walk that several times a week. I drive it every day. You can go down there at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and you know people who drive Lake Street by the fact that they stop at that crosswalk regardless of need, because they're anticipating a bicyclist is darting out. Also, I don't know how much of that vegetation there is owned by the town. I know the parking lot is. Clear cut it back, because you cannot anticipate a bicyclist darting out behind there. Pedestrians are not the problem. They move slower. You can see them coming, you can time it, you can stop it. Before they go spending hundreds of thousands of dollars of my tax money, I'd love to see them put a dozen of those up. Solves the problem. If it doesn't, fine, go spend the money on that. But that is the quickest way to solve this problem, because it is the bicyclists that don't stop that cause this choke point. And you can see it in the morning. Mass Ave to the bike path is backed up. They cruise down to Route 2. In the evening, they get to the bike path. Once they're through Brooks Ave, they cruise up to Mass Ave. I've been watching this for years. And that's the solution, making the bicyclists stop.
Thank you. And before we go to the next individual, I just also want to draw your attention to a suggestion box in the back. And before you leave, if you are interested, please feel free to put suggestions in the box. Thank you.
Hi, Charles Hartshorn, Marigan Street. And I just thought you mentioned timings, and I was trying to, you said 15 seconds or 45. Could you tell us what the timing is of the light right now at Brook Street? I just would want to have that for reference. Thanks.
Sure. I don't have the exact numbers in front of me. I believe it's a 65-second cycle that's there currently. And the cycle length is important, because the shorter the cycle length is, the more responsive the signal will be able to be towards pedestrians or bicyclists crossing the street. So that's something that we've looked at closely, and I don't think, certainly the timing at the Brooks intersection will be optimized, and the phasing and timing will be reviewed. But it's already a pretty short cycle there, and I don't think that's going to be changing significantly.
When the Minuteman Trail was originally open, my name is Glenn Koenig, and I'm at Hopkins Road. When it was originally opened, it was supposedly under parkland rules, so the Minuteman Trail was officially closed at dusk. But I'm assuming these signals will be running 24/7 because people really do ride on it at night?
Yes, I believe the plan is that the signals will be running 24/7. I believe that the Minuteman itself will remain as a park and will close at, I'm not sure of the exact hours, but that is not being proposed to change.
Okay.
But the signal will still be operating.
So we're in a quasi-legal position here, is that it? Okay. Is the signal at Brooks Ave changed to red and yellow flash at any time, or does it remain fully functioning throughout the night?
It will remain fully functional throughout the night.
Okay. When somebody comes up both from the Minuteman Trail and also from these sidewalks on either side, I'm assuming that the vehicular traffic is going to be detected by loop detectors here under the pavement?
Either
to tell when
loop-
there's a car?
Either loops or video, most likely. But
Okay. And what about the pedestrians on Lake Street sidewalks?
So there's a few different options. I imagine that we would have typical pedestrian push buttons. we've also been discussing passive detection, either video or infrared or thermal detection for pedestrians, so they won't actually have to push the button to get the signal indication. In addition to that, we'll probably have bicycle loops on the Minuteman as well to detect bicycles and the presence of those.
Okay, that leads to my next question, which is, so the pedestrians coming along the trail will have a push button probably, or some more high technology method of figuring out they're there?
Yes,
Okay.
and the exact details of the detection are still being discussed and being worked out. Most likely there'll be a push button and also passive detection on top of that.
Okay, so I know that there are some bicycles that are carbon fiber or otherwise non-metal and won't run a loop detector. Is that part of the thing that's being studied?
That is being considered and discussed.
Okay. Is there anything planned so that people who are waiting on the trail will have some countdown that tells them how long they're going to have to wait before they're going to get a green?
It's something that we've discussed on the design committee, and we haven't made that final determination yet.
Because I know from driver psychology, if a signal stays red for too long, there's sort of that critical time. I don't know exactly what it is in traffic engineering school, but essentially drivers will hit a tipping point where they assume the signal is broken or stuck, and they will start to sneak out and see if they can go anyway, even though it's still red. And I'm assuming that bicyclists and pedestrians on the trail will do the same thing, with maybe a shorter time frame in their minds about whether or not they think they're ever going to get to go. And if they think they'll never get to go, they're going to start getting out into the street instead anyway.
Certainly. I appreciate those comments and feedback. I think that ties in to what I was talking about earlier in terms of keeping the cycle lengths as short as possible, and so that the signal operates as efficiently as possible with average delays of 15 to 20 seconds for pedestrians and bikers, so that they're not waiting there for an excessive time period wondering if they're ever going to get the light.
Are you going to have a 20... Oh my goodness, I'm sorry. Is this going to be pre-timed or actuated? Yep.
Actuated.
It's going to be actuated. And
Yes.
Is that going to vary in a 24-hour clock, or is it just going to be the same all the time?
No, we'll probably have different timings for the different peak periods, and it'll
Okay.
be running coordinated during the peak periods with Brook Street, and then during off-peaks it'll be running free so that the signal could be even more responsive to bicyclists and pedestrians.
Thank you. I'm sorry, I didn't turn around to look. I have a traffic engineering background, so that's why I asked.
Thank you so much. If I could trouble all to keep your questions and comments to 1 to 2 minutes, and maybe 1 or 2 comments, please.
I'm even shorter than that. I'm Joan Smeltzer. I live on Freeman Street, a couple of blocks away from Lake. And I just wanted to follow up on the previous, not this fellow's, but the previous. You said it was a 50 to 60 second
Cycle length.
and yet the wait time is 15 to 20 seconds for the pedestrians, bikers to wait. Are they synchronized, or are they not going? I mean, wouldn't we be waiting 50 to 60 seconds then if the travel?
So if, let's say, just for easy math here, let's say it's a 60-second cycle with a 20-second pedestrian phase and 40 seconds for vehicles. If a pedestrian, the longest a pedestrian would have to wait is if they just missed the light and it just turns green for Lake Street, and then there would be a 40-second delay for them.
Okay, so it wouldn't be 50 to 60 for the cars to go by. It would be
Correct.
40 seconds. Okay,
Correct.
thank you very much.
Hi, Jack Hurd, Spy Pond Parkway. Glenn asked quite a few of my questions. Thank you, Glenn. I also want to thank Glenn for pointing out that it is the Minuteman Trail that's important, because as we talk about over and over, it's used by, I bike, I rollerblade, and I also walk. Not very much, as you can see, but it's used. So I just want to use my time, since I wanted to know about the pedestrian, about the timing. You've already answered. But to thank the Board of Selectmen, the design committee, and all those involved with getting this rolling. This has been discussed for many, many years. I know it's expensive, Gene, one of my neighbors, but I believe it's the only solution. It sounds like what you've offered here, it looks fantastic with some tweaks, and I look forward to that being installed. And thank Alan Linoff for representing Kellen Manor at all the original meetings. Thank you.
Hi, Anna Henkin, Marion Road. So I drive to commute up Lake Street, and a lot of people take Orvis to take pressure off of Mass Ave so that it's faster to commute up to Route 2, and it's already really, really slow. Like 5 cars get from Orvis onto Lake Street through a light cycle on that direction on the intersection. So how are you going to keep that from making Orvis back all the way up to Mass Ave and people start going down the one-way in the morning roads during the morning commute? Like the morning commute is the part that I'm really worried about. That's when you can be late for things. That's when, like, you didn't do a study with a police officer. So have you checked what's going to happen with the crossroad, not just Lake Street?
Let me go back to this slide just so it provides a little more context.
So up at the top, Orvis Road
Right,
goes
Orvis is up the
perpendicular to Mass Ave, and then a lot of people commute down that, turn onto, what is that, Brooks Avenue, and then left onto Lake Street to get to Route 2. And that's always backed up. When it starts getting backed up, people start going down the smaller streets to get to Lake Street because taking Mass Ave is even longer. And it puts a lot of pressure on the people who are trying to commute all the way to Cambridge up Mass Ave. So the light cycle is much shorter going across there, and it means that fewer people get through and it gets really backed up, and it just causes a massive traffic jam. So how is the timing with the pedestrians, that tiny little itty-bitty bit of street, and the 4-way intersection there going to happen?
Sure. Well, the primary goal of the signal coordination between the Minuteman and Brooks is to keep the traffic flowing on Lake Street so that the majority of vehicles will not have to stop twice, both at Lake Street and at Brooks. And with the coordination, the goal will be to keep this area, it's about 200, 250 feet or so between the intersections, clear, so that when the signal turns red for Lake Street at the bike path, there won't be a queue here because the signal at Lake Street at Brooks will have stopped maybe 8 seconds earlier or 7 seconds earlier or something like that. So this area will be kept clear, and that should hopefully help a little bit with the traffic flow on Orvis Street.
But when does that cross street get to go? You don't seem to have planned for that.
The Brooks Ave would generally be going at the same time as the Minuteman Bikeway.
Okay, the majority of traffic on that street in the morning is going up Lake Street.
Towards Mass Ave or towards Route 2, are you saying?
Towards Route 2.
Okay. Right.
So that's going to cause a big traffic jam. That's all.
Thanks for your feedback.
Nicholas Croquetos, Orvis Road. So thank you for taking the time. Thank you to the Board of Selectmen and our Arlington DPW for taking in this initiative. It's a very important initiative. Being on Orvis Road, I can attest to the young lady who spoke before me, the traffic does back up actually to the third island, almost the third island, which would be about Randolph Street to Freeman. Recently, a neighbor of mine on Newcomb Street, some of you may know this, had a $100,000 damage done because somebody had road rage. And that road rage was caused because of the immense traffic. So like this young lady pointed out, they're using Orvis as a cut-through to avoid the Lake Street light, to avoid the Lake Street traffic that's being predominantly caused by the bike path. Like as you said, they have to go and stop, and the coordination of signals don't work. So with this being said, I didn't hear anything about the improvement of the signals at Lake and Brooks, and I would anticipate that the town would make that infrastructure upgrade to have a coordinated system where your lights from the Lake Street intersection to Brooks to this are all in sync. If they're not in sync, this will not work. The residents of Orvis Road, I can attest to many of us frustrated. There are do not enters. The lovely officers from the Arlington Police Department work very hard to prevent the road rage. I am fearful that if this is not planned correctly and hastily, because I know you're doing your work, but when I don't hear exact answers about Brooks, and like she asked Orvis Road, we're going to have some more issues arise. And I would presume that this is a coordinated effort and we're looking past just this intersection. We're looking at all three intersections.
Yes, thank you for your feedback. I'm sorry if this wasn't clear earlier in the presentation. I thought I had mentioned it. All of the signal equipment at Brook Street is proposed to be replaced as part of this project and is proposed to be coordinated with the new signal at the Minuteman Bikeway crossing.
That's good news. That's very good news. We like that. It's a good step in direction.
The Lake Street Mass Ave signal is not included in the coordination. That was evaluated and looked at early on in the initial TAC report, and the distance between Brooks and Mass Ave, and with the predominant flows along Mass Ave itself, made a few different things, but the coordination wasn't very effective due to the distance. And in addition to that, with all the conflicting traffic up at Mass Ave, that signal operates on a much longer cycle length, which would create much longer pedestrian and bicycle delays. Because when signals are running coordinated, they all need to be running on the same cycle to stay in sync. So ultimately, the coordination with the Lake Street Mass Ave signal was not recommended to be included as part of the system, but certainly Brooks and the bike path are.
Okay. I urge you to take a look at that because Lake Street is backed up all the way to the Mass Ave light and Mass Ave, which leads drivers to turn down Orvis Road. And this certainly isn't about Orvis Road. It's about safety, right? It's all about safety for our pedestrians, our bicyclists, and our vehicular traffic. That's what this is all about. And if you're a resident in the general neighborhood, you can see that those that live in Kelwin Manor or those that live on the opposite side, there's a lot of signs up that say do not enter, and that's because why? We have traffic. So how can we make everyone happy, I guess is the question. Finally, yeah, I know. It'd be a great world if we made everyone happy. Finally, just, with the other, just quickly, the signals, the look of the signals, I urge the town, if we're going to do something, let's make it look pretty and presentable, and let's let it match what we did on Mass Ave. If we're putting up new signals, it'd be nice to coordinate the look, the aesthetic look, and if you're going to do lighting, just for those neighbors that are in that general area, maybe lit bollards to light the pathways and not light up ahead. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much.
Good evening. Joe Barr, 24 Park Street, not Park Ave, so I am in East Arlington. I guess a question and a couple comments. Was there actually a warrant analysis done for this, or was it just based on the simulation and the recommendation from TAC?
There was a warrant analysis done as part of the initial TAC report.
Did it indicate, so the signal is warranted?
It is.
Okay. So I guess just a few comments, and I'll try to keep it brief. I guess I would argue that Brooks Avenue Lake Street signal is also a big source of the problems, and that it is not operating in any good way right now. And so I would encourage the design committee to think about the idea of let's fix that first and see if we still have a problem, and then look at whether we need to do a signal at the bikeway. So that's comment one. Comment two is that this drawing of the bikeway crossing looks really good, and I'm curious whether this could work without a signal, because this is a big improvement for visibility, for organizing the intersection, and as you pointed out, you will have to signal control the sidewalk crossing, and with I have a 10-year-old. With kids going to the elementary school, I think it's going to be very difficult to manage those conflicts with signals, and I think it's going to be a false sense of safety that you can cross and that no one's going to try to come across on the sidewalk. And so the conflicts between cyclists and people walking on the sidewalk. So those are my main comments. And I guess the last one, and Wayne did ask us to be respectful, and I'll apologize in advance for this, but I guess I know that one of the plans is to pay for this using MassDOT Complete Streets funding. And The town has tremendous needs that they could use that money for. Bike lanes, safe routes to school, all kinds of improvements, sidewalks like was done on Gray Street. And I mean, you've done a good job of, I guess I would argue, cloaking this in a veneer of safety. But at the end of the day, this is really about increasing delay for non-motorized users and reducing delay for motorized users. And so I think that that is not really an appropriate use of Complete Streets money. So I think if the town really wants this, they should find another way to pay for it, because there's so many other ways you could use that $400,000. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Mustafa Varaglu. I'm 26 Shawnee Road. Not an East Arlington resident, but I ride the Bikeway almost year-round every day. And I commute during basically commuting hours. So my one concern, let's say this goes in with the light, or even with this new redesign, is in the mornings, there's a lot of people on the bike path. And I don't know if I heard correctly. Was a survey done during the morning rush hour? Okay. Sorry, I came late. So one of my big concerns is, as you pile up people for 15 or 20 seconds, if you go back to your drawing, I don't think there's, I'm oddballing it, you guys have better math. I don't think that capture area nor that release area are big enough to not end up with a pile of bikes trying to get around each other, and then the last ones running into the first pedestrians, for example, as they re-merge. And I don't know how you would model that or what you could do, but really look at those distances and picture when Hardy's going full speed at whatever it is, 755, 805, and the bicyclists are coming in the fall, one after another. I think whether the light signal is there or not, I think just if you enforce a stop, you'll have that issue. The other one, I've been here a long time now, but not always being from here, and living in other parts of the country. The no right on red is really peculiar for those of you that haven't maybe lived in other places. And I assume that Orvis Brooks or the Brooks has a no right on red, being near a school. But if you want to keep things moving, it may be appropriate to do a red, and then put a green arrow, and have people not crossing during that time, obviously, and release some of that pressure coming out of Brooks, because that's also the problem here. You have no right on reds, especially in places like that, and everybody, you're just sitting there watching that empty road get wasted. But my biggest concern really is, even when you have 4 bikes and 3 pedestrians and trying to all get, the way we do it now, kind of pause, stop, whatever, and then go, and then you have 3 or 4 people coming from the other direction, it's a real mess to try and not hit each other. And a lot of those people are between 6 and 12. And they're not really looking where they're going. They're talking over their shoulder, walking forward, that kind of thing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm Barbara Engel on Egerton Road, and most people, first of all, thank you so much for doing this, and also most people have asked questions that were in my mind, so I'll keep it really short. It's very trivial. If you are going to have one of that sort of little red strip in between, do not raise it, that it will be a problem, and do not use bricks. They heave up in the winter, so if you're going to do something, just paint it. Very simple. That's it.
Thanks.
My name is Todd Spivak, Summer Street in the Heights. I'm a daily commuter year-round during peak hours, and I'll advocate actually on the other side of the on the median. I would asking at least in the summer for something removable. Having a curb there allows cyclists a comfortable place to kind of step off, wait, and then easily remount to make that crossing. And I think especially in the initial years when we're not quite sure how this is all going to work, having something that's maybe like a paved, dense rubber kind of matting material that's high enough to step off of, that has some structure but could be removed for plowing while everybody's getting used to it, could be beneficial. And also I'm asking that, at least during the peak hours, for some predictability to crossing, so that if I'm a quarter mile out in the path, I know that I could slow down, group up with other bicyclists, so I could catch a green, because that's the problem today, right? There's chaos. You approach the intersection, everybody has to stop-ish. And I'm a stop-ish, and especially if Brooks is red, stop-ish and proceed. If it's green, I'll stop and wait for it to clear. But having the ability to know that it's going to be green, so I could speed up a little bit and catch a green would be a way to, through just basic user, through making it a more appropriate experience for everybody to kind of get where they need to be based on their abilities. So thank you.
Thanks.
Hi, my name is Phil Goff. I'm at 94 Grafton Street. I'm also the co-chair of East Arlington Livable Streets. And I want to thank town manager and the town in general for putting the committee together, having a representative from East Arlington Livable Streets on the committee. I think it's great. The committee has really a nice mix of town staff and representatives from different advocacy groups and neighborhood representatives, technical staff. I think that's great. Jason, you'd mentioned, I think in the first slide or maybe the second slide, that the number one issue for you or for the committee, for the project team was safety, project safety. I think no one would disagree with that. The concern mostly was about safety. Ostensibly, the concern was safety, as we are today and how the crossing or the intersection functions today. And I guess I would posit that the safety concern that I have is not so much how things function today. It's my concern about how things may function in the future. And you'd mentioned the unintended consequences. What we're seeing here is, based on the data, is about 1 crash per year, roughly, involving a pedestrian or cyclist. It sounds like 1 to 2, roughly, average per year. I'm guessing that probably resulted in an injury, probably a modest injury. I don't believe there's been any fatalities, and maybe there's been, some of the injuries perhaps are serious. But the reason that there's been no fatalities and no serious crashes and very few crashes is because the uncertainty that's sort of born within the current design really encourages motorists mostly to slow down, because there is that uncertainty, the lack of sight lines, et cetera. And I'm not saying we should leave it that way for good. But that's why we're seeing few crashes, and they're not deadly crashes nor very serious crashes in terms of injury. So my biggest concern with the signal in the future is kind of, there's an A and a B. I think you need to look at the safety issues with regards to peak hour and the safety issues with regards to off-peak hour. So you had mentioned, and I think rightfully so, the concern about cyclist speed, which I think is very real as a potential threat. When the Minuteman has the green for, I guess, about 20 seconds, that cyclists coming through at peak hour are going to be at speed coming across the intersection, especially with the conflict with hardy kids. We understand that that's a conflict during the peak hour, but that's really more of a peak hour conflict. I think what you hadn't mentioned, but what you and the committee really need to think about carefully is what the safety issues will be in the off-peak hour. And that's where the issues will be less about bike speed through there, although that could be a bit of a problem, but there'll be far less pedestrian cross traffic and fewer kids, certainly. But on weekends or in the middle of the day, the bigger concern that I have, and where there's the potential, if this isn't done right, to actually make this intersection and the combination of 2 intersections less safe than it is now, is the concern of motorists seeing basically 2 green lights in front of them. And where right now, those that approach from either direction, Minuteman path, generally slow down to about 15 miles an hour, some even slower, just because you're not sure. I can see people keep staying at their 30, 35, God forbid, sometimes 40 maybe, through Lake Street, through this double green, this combination of 2 green lights. And in this off-peak period, when there's going to be very large gaps between traffic during weekends, I see a lot of people, I see very few people respecting the signal. I think compliance will be quite low if the signal functions during off-peak the way it does during peak. So I think that's sort of my challenge to you and the committee and the town, is to think really carefully, what is this going to look like really most of the time, and that is off-peak, at night, on weekends, in the middle of the day. What is really the best solution here? And I think there's many options, but I think, to me, the worst option would be that it's configured exactly the same way throughout the whole day and weekends. I can envision off-peak, maybe the signal's turned off, I don't know. Maybe it's a flashing yellow for Lake Street and it's a flashing red for the Minuteman traffic. That's another option. Joe had mentioned it, and I agree with what Joe had said, that looking at it, it kind of looks like it's a great safety enhancement by itself in the design. Very bright colors, wide crosswalk, etc. If that signal were turned off in the weekend, or it's just a flashing yellow, I think that would achieve many of the safety goals of slowing people down. the car traffic down to pass through there. I also think it's probably worth looking at a raised intersection. I mean, the way I'm looking at the graphics, it almost seems sort of perfectly situated to be a raised intersection. Obviously, there's some cost issues there. Maybe you've already looked at it. Drainage can be complicated, but I think that's another thing to look at as well. And I also agree that even though I personally and many people at East Arlington Livable Streets, there's sort of a diversity of opinion about the signal and the impact it will have. At the very least, or what I know, is there's a real consensus of people who do not necessarily support that the funding for this, which we know could be up to $300,000 or $400,000, would come out of Complete Streets money. That's very important for safe routes to school, for pedestrian safety and access, and bike safety and access. I think the primary point of this project generally is to have an efficient intersection and to basically improve the efficiency of automobile throughput, which is okay. I mean, but we should acknowledge that. I'm not unsympathetic to the traffic delays here. I've been stuck in it. I think everyone has. So I just think we need to be honest about that and not seek Complete Streets money. Find it somewhere else. All right. Thank you. I know I went too long.
Thank you for your comments. And there's one thing I'd like to clarify before the next commenter speaks. In regards to how the traffic signals will operate during the peak periods versus off-peak, that's something that's been discussed early on with the TAC, and that discussion has continued with the Design Review Committee. And our thoughts now are that the traffic signal would be coordinated during the peak periods when it's really absolutely necessary in terms of the traffic flows on Lake Street are so high. During off-peak periods, the two signals would not be coordinated, and by operating freely, the signal at the Minuteman will be able to be much more responsive. So the 15 to 20 seconds of average delay for pedestrians and bicyclists was really a peak period number because that's when the observations were made. During off-peak times, when the signal is not coordinated, you're not necessarily going to get the walk sign or the bike green light the instant you press the button or the instant the bicycle is detected. But if it's been more than 30 or 40 seconds since the last crossing across Lake Street, it almost would be instantaneous. So during off-peak times, the signal is going to be much more responsive to users on the bike path, pedestrians and bicyclists. And that's not to say it won't be responsive during peak periods, but there's more, more traffic and more volumes that all need to be balanced out. So what we think we have is reasonable delays during the peak periods, and then even lower delays for the bikes and the peds during off-peak times.
All right. Hi, Arthur Prokosh, Thorndike Street by the dog park. So I probably, in this particular intersection, walk, bike, and drive about the same amount. And I can tell you, driving, if I haven't driven for a while, I'm coming down Lake Street, just got off of Route 2. It's hard to see this intersection. And I don't think it's just paint on the sidewalk or on the crossing. And I think, yes, having a stoplight there would help. But I want to echo the comments, having a raised intersection, having a safety zone designated for the entire area, including the school for 20 miles an hour, perhaps narrowing the roadway. All of those things are design features that would complement what we're already doing for bicycles. Because the bicycles right now, what we're saying is we need to have a lot of investment and change the way you approach the intersection so that you can be predictable and so you can be safe. And what I want to say is we need to put at least as much effort into the 2-ton vehicles that will cause the immediate safety impact if there is one. So I want you to look very closely at that if you can. Other than that, I just want to make sure that we're using up-to-date data. I know in the Boston area since 2014, there's been huge increases in cycling. Do we have updated cycle counts?
I believe the last cycle data that I've seen were the June 2015 the trial runs that were conducted.
Yeah, if possible, it'd be great to get updated counts to be able to weigh the options and the different users of this facility.
Thanks.
We still do have a lot of folks, so let's try to be brief. Thank you.
Hi, John Tortelli, Sunnyside Ave. Just wondering, has any thought been given to making a little left-hand turn area on Lake Street going on to Brooks from both directions? That seems the bottleneck. You get through like the Bikeway and then you have a green light at Brooks, but somebody taking a left there sort of swings into the right and blocks all the through traffic. And that kind of bottlenecks everything. That kind of bottlenecks everything when somebody just sits there waiting to make the left and they move over a little.
Sure. Thank you for your comment. Those left turn lanes are not being proposed now. It is a pretty tight area, and we're not proposing any changes right now at the Brooks intersection.
A little dot of line, people stay on the side.
Hi, I'm Christian Klein. I live on Newport Street, away from here, but I am a year-round commuter through this intersection. One question is, I know that you had talked about pedestrian signaling across Lake Street. Is there also going to be pedestrian signaling parallel to Lake Street?
Yes.
Okay.
To cross the bike path.
To cross the bike path?
Yes.
And I would also encourage, I'm assuming on Lake Street, there'll be a clear stop line. There'll probably be the shark's teeth ahead of the stop line. If we could do something similar on the bike path to really clearly delineate where cyclists need to be stopping, because that's one of the problems in the bike commute in the morning is the cross traffic on Hardy and making sure that bikes really stop behind that so that the Hardy traffic has their way through. Other points that we already talked about, but I just wanted to reiterate, with the cycling of the two lights together, I'm hoping that will cut down on the number of cars that park in the middle of the intersection during rush hour.
Yes, that's one of the goals.
I want to make sure we maintain plowability throughout the winter. You had already addressed the sight lines, which I think would be a great idea. And also, as Mustafa had mentioned, increasing the storage space on the bike path so that there's more queue space so bikes queue more linearly rather than horizontally. Thank you.
Thanks.
Hello, Steve Revelak, Sunnyside Avenue. I like the way your proposed concept design shows a segregation of the bike area and the pedestrian area. I hope that you'd consider signage similar to what they use on the Southwest Corridor Park, just for clarity. I mean, it's nothing much. It's just a little post with an arrow that says, pedestrians this way, cyclists this way, but, it makes it really clear where you're expected to go. And I would also like to echo an earlier comment about sightlines, particularly so that someone approaching the crossing from one direction is able to clearly see what's going on in the other three directions. Thank you.
Hi, Andrew Freeman, Kimball Road. I don't know if this was mentioned earlier, but I'm afraid you've made this a little too nice. And I'm worried that a car is going to turn from Lake Street onto the bike path. It already happens in other areas, but with it being extra wide and extra pretty with a stoplight on it, I'm really afraid that is going to happen. All right, I'll keep it short. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Chris Porter, Lake Hill Avenue. I was wondering if you had previously looked at the alternative of taking out the signal at Brook Street and doing a raised intersection there along with a raised crossing at the bike path.
I don't think that alternative was reviewed.
It's okay. I'm thinking something like along Ringe Avenue in Cambridge, next to the Ringe Avenue School, where they have raised crossings. That is a bus route, so they do have heavy vehicles going over those. The reason I'm asking that is I think it might be cheaper and more efficient than having all the signals in there. What it would do, it would force cars to slow down to about 15 miles an hour at any time of the day, 24/7. But it would also let traffic through any time that somebody's not there to cross without signals regulating things. In front of the school, at the raised crossing, you need a crossing guard during the school hours, but they have that anyway, so you're not paying any more for that. And it would basically be a self-regulating system in terms of the traffic flow, and that might be the most efficient way of getting all the traffic through there and getting all the users through there safely.
Thank you.
Excuse me. Hi, Jim Ballin from Swan Place. You mentioned that this is consistent with a crossing in Lexington, but in Arlington we have three. This would be the third different type of system that would cross a street in a bike path. So there's one on Mill Street with the blinking yellow. There's the new one on Swan Place, the Hawk system, and then this. So I'm curious. I'm assuming you've thought of all the three options, and this is preferred. I'm wondering if you could just elaborate why. I may be alone here, but I actually like the one on Mill Street. Thanks.
Hi, Bill Eikamp, Pleasant Street.
Sure. The crossing at Mill Street is a rectangular rapid flashing beacon, flashing yellow lights. It does not require a full stop. It's really a reminder that to vehicles to be doing what they should be doing anyway, which is yielding to pedestrians in the crosswalk. There were several alternatives that were evaluated early on by the TAC, and the full signal was the preferred alternative in that evaluation, and it seemed to strike the best balance in terms of for the number of users here at this crossing, both pedestrians, bicyclists, as well as the vehicles on Lake Street. In regards to a Hawk signal, it's an interesting choice. It's sort of in between a full signal and an RRFP or a warning light. And those are generally, this might not be the best application for it because we want to have very clear indications for both pedestrians and bicyclists on the bike path itself. And again, the early recommendations from the TAC were a full signal to strike the best balance in terms of controlling it and being the most clear to all users. And I'd be happy to talk later if you'd like to.
Hi. I've been biking for 75 years and driving for 65 years. I've done the traffic survey at Brooks Ave. I have to say, for the record, I'm impressed by how few people block the intersection. That's heartening. I've done plenty of bike counts on the bike path. My point is that for a bicyclist, the coin of the realm is kinetic energy. And if I'm trucking down that path at a good clip, putting on the brakes is a curse. If you give me some warning, I'll coast. If I come to a place where all of a sudden it's red, I'm not going to like that. It seems to me that providing the cyclists with some warning about when the light is going to turn red would be extremely helpful and would dramatically increase your compliance. Cyclists, and I'm not immune to this, tend to be a law unto themselves. The fact that I've been doing this for 75 years and I'm still alive means I kind of get it. But give us some warning, and I think we'll be more compliant.
Thank you.
Hi, my name's Tim Masters. I'm on Brooks Ave. And I think the main issue with the most traffic is the morning, because what earlier people said, you have the backup from Brooks going up Orvis, and they just have a little time to make the right-hand turn. I drive, I bike, and I walk. So I've used that whole intersection using all modes of transportation. And I believe the major problem is with the bikers. And I'm a biker by heart. I bike everywhere. But the bikers just think they can just cruise through any time. And I don't think a traffic light is going to solve the problem. I really don't. I think this is going to be a lot of money for nothing. And one other issue I think you should take into account is that around 5 of 8 during school days, you have the crossing guard pushing the walk button at the intersection of Brooks and Lake. And has your little survey taken into account that? because that holds up everywhere except for the bike path. So you got the bikers going, and then once the light starts going again, it's a complete gridlock from Lake Street all the way up Orvis, all the way back down towards Alewife, and then going in both directions. Thank you.
Thanks.
Hi, David Kaczynski. Just a couple quick comments. So I think at the light, Brook Street and Lake Street, just having left turn arrows in the evening would be great. I mean, Lake Street can get backed up to the Route 2 ramp, and it can take 30 minutes, 5 o'clock, 5:30, to get down Lake Street as a commuter. And a lot of it, one of the comments was having a left turn lane, but even just a left arrow to free up that intersection so people don't get blocked in that section would be great. And then also, there's no turn on red signals, and I think some of those might not be necessary, so I just encourage you to review if those are still necessary with all the new signalings, if people can kind of use their discretion as a car once they make the stop to continue. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Sir.
Sir, do you know how much those signs cost that they put in the crosswalk?
All right. Okay.
The DPW director tells me they cost somewhere between $300 and $600. Of course, there's no money back guarantee, but that's why we take this feedback. We go back to the. Thank you. Do you have anything else you want to add, Jason? All right. Well, thank you again, everybody, for coming tonight. Thank you very much for the feedback. Like I said, I was just about to. Wow. I was about to say, as I mentioned at the outset, what we'll do now is we'll take the feedback that we received tonight. Everything that was presented tonight will be put on the town website. The design review committee will continue to meet. Jason and his team will work with the design review committee and consider this feedback and make any updates that the committee agrees to. And then we'll call a meeting again in late September to review 75% design plans and take further feedback before we finalize the plan. So those are the next steps at this point. So I believe, most people signed in? Did we collect emails in the back, Corey? Did we collect contact information? No. So we'll put together a distribution list so that we can email to all of you when the next meeting is. But otherwise, stay tuned to either the town notices that we email out. You can subscribe to town notices or check the town website or the newspaper for when we're going to hold the next design hearing. All right. Thank you very much.